maybe Jamie Pollard was right. Maybe Iowa State won't be able to keep pace, and in the next 5 to 10 years will be completely tossed aside out of the Power 4 conferences and into oblivion. It seems like the Big 12 and all of the teams in it have figured out how to spend money, and Iowa State could just be left on the side. We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're talking about Ryder Lyons committing to BYU, how good of a player he is, how it's important, obviously, for BYU, but really what this means for Iowa State as far as recruiting goes, and transfer portal will have implications there as well. So, going to dive into that in the first segment. Then segments 2 and 3, we're talking about TJ Otzelberger and his thoughts on the basketball team that's coming up this upcoming season. Boy, they might not lose. There is a very real chance of that. So stick around to hear me break all that down and more. But first, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, Ryder Lyons announced his commitment to BYU just yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. Shout out for, obviously the platform, getting him in front of this many people, made it a cool event. I'm not going to dive too much into Ryder Lyons here. The whole situation, it's exciting, obviously, for Ryder, exciting for BYU. Not so much for the Cyclones. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of leave it at very, very good quarterback, maybe the best quarterback that BYU has ever had. I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't really done my research on the history since 2002, prior to 2002. He's the highest ranked quarterback since 2002. So that's why I bring up 2002. I was born in 2001. So, I'm not going to lie to you. That's a little bit before my time. So it's obviously exciting for both parties involved. And he won't play next year, I believe. He'll be on a mission. It'll be the year after that. So I suppose that this one particular player won't have a direct impact on Iowa State immediately, but I do think that we're seeing something, a little seed here. Now, you're going to have to stick with me a little bit because I understand that this, it might feel like a stretch, but I just feel like it's the beginning. And this was helped out a little bit by Jamie Pollard's comments, so I'm not going to claim that I'm the first one to come up with this idea. But we all know how much money BYU has, and they're not the only school or team in the Big 12 to have money. Texas Tech in that conversation as well. Kansas seems like a school that's been doing it for a long time, but maybe now that the tables are kind of leveled out, it's maybe not quite entirely the same. Really what it comes down to, is NIL money, and how is it spent and where does it come from? Because what we've talked about before on this show is that Iowa State, due to the Iowa Board of Regents, can't gather any money from the Iowa State University, right? Same as how Iowa athletics can't get any money from the University of Iowa. That's just not how it works, right? They can't donate money into the athletic department. Other schools can, okay? And now I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have every tax record of how BYU or Texas Tech run their money, but the bottom line, and honestly, even Iowa was in this conversation just a few weeks ago when we were talking about their new program that I can't remember what it is exactly, but it starts with an F, I believe, where they're basically just crowdfunding money. And Iowa State, I am kind of maybe terrified a little bit. Terrified is a pretty strong word, but definitely my guard is up. My alarm system is like at the ready for maybe Iowa State is going to be completely outpaced in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, Jamie Pollard talked about how Iowa State is in an okay spot with the amount of money that they have in reserve, right? The $20.5 million that go towards athletes every year, according to Jamie Pollard, they have about 2 years worth of reserve that can go towards that fund, quote unquote, to the athletes. But after 2 years, Iowa State's in a really tricky situation. Why does this matter? Really quick recap, because you everydayers out there, you know what's going on. But essentially, if schools are able to use money from the, or athletic departments are able to use money from the schools, that doesn't stress their athletic revenue generated quite as heavily. Depending on the situation and how much money is coming in, maybe it doesn't stress them at all. Obviously, schools like Arizona State, as Jamie Pollard said, bringing in $50 million, the athletic department is from the school. And that way more than clears the $20 million that they pay to athletes. So that's going to be a bit of a situation as opposed to a school like Iowa State, who might only generate $110 million in revenue in a given year. And then you're allowed to use up to 22%. So they do technically meet the requirement. They can pay out the 20.5 million, but now instead of generating 110 million, you've generated something like 90 million, right? You're losing $20 million, which, yeah, in the grand scheme of the whole thing, it's like 20%. It's not that big of a deal. I'm sure I spend more than 20% of my paycheck every month on things I really shouldn't be. Okay, I know I can kind of see the gears turning in your head there, but it's still $20 million that other schools aren't having to pay, essentially, right? If it's coming from other sources. And so I do wonder if long-term schools like BYU or Texas Tech that have been really in the news kind of recently, obviously now Iowa with their new program, I believe it was Flight something. I'm totally blanking on this. But the way that was structured, I really think Iowa State needs to do something like that, because they have to find a way to get around this basically money issue to stay competitive. Now, I will stand by my comments that Iowa State is getting better and better at recruiting, and the winning that we are starting to see is only going to result in more winning. I still completely think that it's a snowball effect, that you start winning, you start garnering more attention, you bring in better recruits, better coaches, you start winning more. That it's a compound interest type of situation. Iowa State national champions. I still stand by that. But there is an element of, if it's between Iowa State and a school that's willing to pay me $20 million, which is probably not going to be the case, it's hard not to take $20 million, right? And now, obviously, on a real level, that number is going to be a lot smaller in comparison to what Iowa State would be able to put up. But I don't think I worry about the money issue, and not necessarily because of just one player. I get that Ryder Lyons, Iowa State wasn't in the top three for Ryder Lyons, and it is what it is. It feels like Iowa State kind of hitched their wagon to Jet Tamala, and BYU had been offering 4 years ago to Ryder Lyons. It's not about Iowa State losing this quote unquote recruiting battle that I'm sure that they were maybe partially involved in, but not really. I just look at this as down the road, Ryder Lyons picking BYU over Oregon, right? And there are tons of factors to a decision like this, but the money side of things, I would like to see Iowa State make some moves. I don't think that that's too outlandish of a take. I'm not saying here that Iowa State is completely toast. I'm not saying that Iowa State is going to win a national title because of their NIL revenue. I'm not saying either of those things. I think Iowa State's culture is very, very good. And in some cases, it doesn't really matter what the NIL value of some athletes get, what these athletes are getting, because they're willing to go through the process of being an Iowa State athlete, the development, right? The culture side of it. I think that's very valuable as well. And so what I'm trying to say here is I don't think it's ridiculous to say that if Iowa State can figure out a way to make some, move some stuff around and make money for this athletic department to pay and essentially have that money that they originally were planning on bringing in, I think that's a good move. I really do. Now, what do I know? I get it. I'm just some guy in front of a microphone. I completely understand. But TJ Otzelberger was also in front of a microphone yesterday, had some very interesting things to say about this basketball squad coming up this season. Can't wait to talk about it coming up right after this. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow, Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please revisit the Rougiette website for full safety information. Switching gears here, we're going to go from we were kind of in the football conversation, more NIL based, but we're going to pivot towards basketball specifically here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Otzelberger had some media availability, had a lot to break down as far as essentially the roster at this current moment in time. That was really the big point of this whole conversation, and there were a lot of comments made, so we're going to kind of weave our way through what he said, what I think is exciting, maybe some things that aren't exactly awesome. Okay. And we're going to have to be that's what it is. Right. But there are bright sides to that too. So let's go ahead and start with maybe the not so great. And I'm sure you had at least heard of this or have seen the news that Mason Williams will not be playing next year. The guard that I was so excited to see play in Cardinal and Gold will not be playing next year. We knew that there was going to potentially be some injury concerns, but I believe it was surgery that completely he will not play next season. Now, bummer when I heard that. I'm sure I hope I didn't just break that news to you. It's not exactly breaking news. If it is breaking news to you, tag me at Nick_Marv on Twitter. I maybe I'm gonna get this insider game going. a little bit behind the 8 ball on this one, but you got to start somewhere. Nonetheless, I'm sure you were probably bummed out when you heard about this too. I personally, like I said, very, very high on this Mason Williams player. I think he really could bring a lot to this team. However, seems like Otzelberger and company weren't exactly super, super shocked. This is something that he did say we weren't expecting him to sit out this entire season. They were maybe wondering, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically how much would he actually play? Right? Would it be a full season? How much percentage would he be at if he played every single game? That kind of conversation. It's really about like, where are you at now? What do we need to do before the season? Where will you be at the beginning of the season? Does that dictate if we take time off or if we just play you and you play kind of this whole season at less than 100%? That's kind of the conversation that I was picking up. The cards that I was picking up from what Otzelberger was laying down, if you will. But what he said was promising to me, because I think a lot of people look at the transfer portal completely differently than they look at high school recruiting. And the way that Otzelberger phrased this, I thought was kind of neat, I guess is maybe the word I would use. I think when people look at the transfer portal versus high school recruiting, I think a lot of people look at the transfer portal as a Band-Aid, which I don't think is necessarily the wrong way of thinking about it. I think that the constant turnover that we've seen in the last few years, it's hard to think of it in any way besides it being a Band-Aid. Just because you bring a player in doesn't mean that they won't be gone next year. And so it's kind of a plug and play method where you can fill holes that are kind of currently on your roster, depending on the situation that you're in, whatever the case might be. Say for football, like Iowa State lost two very, very good wide receivers, still have good wide receivers on the roster, but maybe we could use some depth there. Let's go pick some guys up in the transfer portal. And I think a lot of people look at that as, all right, we'll plug in some wide receivers for now. We'll keep working on those base guys. Maybe the transfers play a lot and the base guys get a little bit better. If the transfers move on, we've got guys in our system. We can always plug and play again. I think that's how a lot of people look at it, as opposed to recruiting. The hope with recruiting is when you bring these guys in, they stick around for the full 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 20 years, whatever it is now, what it could be. And they're a long-term play. I think that's how a lot of people perceive it. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that when players come in through the transfer portal, if they're, very, very good. And honestly, every player, I think, to a certain extent now with the roster limits. But I think most people would agree they would want them on their team most of the time. Like, I don't think anyone's looking at a transfer and saying, man, I sure hope he sticks around for only a year. I don't think that's the case. But I do think that in general, like I've said probably about 5 times now, just trying to make my point clear, that there is an element of transfer portal guys are more viewed as short-term fill hole guys as opposed to recruits who are kind of viewed as the future, if you will. And there's truth, I think, to both reasons, at least as far as why those decisions are made. But Otzelberger said that Mason Williams was kind of looked at as someone that's going to be a long-term play, which is awesome. I mean, is that what sets Otzelberger apart from the rest of the coaches in the country? Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to be honest. I'm not in every coaching a room across the country. I don't know if this is something that's super, super common, but I love the way that Otzelberger phrased it. And it was something that they said they knew what they were getting as far as Mason Williams in the transfer portal. And really, this is the decision they're making, and the decision that Mason Williams is making. Like, it's in the interest of his health and well-being. And they're really, they picked him up as a long-term play, so they're not too concerned. They've got a lot of other guys on the roster, or Otzelberger has a lot of other guys on the roster that are very competent. We'll talk more about them here in just a minute. But in the meantime, this is kind of a great opportunity for Mason Williams. This is going to be a great year for him to prepare, terminology-wise, understand how we do things, says Otzelberger. I think that's a really big kind of, it's not so big in basketball in comparison to like football, or maybe chess, maybe would be, I don't know. I haven't heard of Iowa State having a chess team, but to be fair, I definitely would not have been invited. So it's kind of dual-sided dagger there. Nonetheless, there is an element of how things are done, if not at a strategy level, certainly at a culture level. And that we will also talk about here in just a few minutes. Mason Williams kind of seeing what it's actually like to be an Iowa State basketball player. I think that's going to be great for him, but over the long term, I think this is great as far as, the culture and the effort level and where does he fit into the team and the program for the next year. I think this is a great opportunity. It's a great spot to come do rehab. And I think you grow as a person when you come to Iowa State. So that is super, super exciting as far as the bright side for Mason Williams. Of course, I'm going to be bummed that he's not going to be out there playing. Just based on what I have seen from Mason Williams, I think it's a great addition to the Iowa State basketball roster. I think that he's a guy that, in my opinion, I thought made Iowa State better effective immediately. Especially with how many guys we were losing and what positions we were losing them at. I really like the Mason Williams pickup, but that's just me. Let me know what you think down below or at Twitter at Nick_Marv. That's not the only guy on the roster, though. Otzelberger went into deep detail on multiple guys, as well as kind of the state of the organization. We're talking about that coming up right after this. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Personally, my favorite feature is being able to budget alongside a partner. Makes it super, super easy so that everyone is on the same page. And honestly, like I said earlier in today's show, I need the budgeting side of this app. It really helps me iron down where I can kind of cut back on my spending and put a little bit more into savings. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So basketball, not exactly on everyone's top of mind right now, but I promise you it really should be. This team for Iowa State they could literally not lose next year. There's a chance. Okay. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's dive in to everything Otzelberger said, or at least as much as we can fit into this final segment of today's show. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. If you haven't, subscribe buttons down below at Nick_Marv on Twitter is where you can find me personally. Ask me questions, I'll answer them here on the show. All right, let's dive into it. The biggest thing that honestly that I derived from this media availability, there were two main points: veterans and the new guys. Wow, shocker! I understand, but it sounded a lot better in my head. Okay, let's talk about the new guys first. A couple guys that really stood out. The Blake Buchanan and Eric Mulder, I think, are two guys that Otzelberger is extremely, extremely excited about. Blake Buchanan specifically. Both those guys, Otzelberger talked about being at the 5, and he mentioned not only at the 5, but across the entire team, just how much faster this team is going to be than last year, that this team is going, they're very, very quick on their feet, and the effort is there and all of that, but the speed is something that he mentioned over and over. As far as Blake Buchanan, a couple of the things that he talked about: mobility, his intelligence. He said he's very, very confident in him. He's very tough. He's a good passer and finisher. He said he's really perfect for the position they have him in right now, and he just really stood out. Like, to me, it was like that was just boom, boom, boom. Great sign, great sign, great sign. Road sign? No, great sign. You know exactly what I mean here. Blake Buchanan, not somebody that was in my circle of the internet, I suppose, not somebody that was talked about a whole lot for Iowa State coming into this season, but could be a real difference maker. Eric Mulder, another guy that didn't get a ton of love based on what I saw, but I don't think anyone was necessarily upset. Otzelberger basically saying that he plays hard. He's a winning player. He's got great speed defensively, like I just mentioned, that the team speed has improved. And obviously that's going to affect, closing out on the ball, keeping the feet moving on defense, staying in front of guys, but also in transition as well. And then that kind of transitions perfectly to the offensive side of the ball. A couple of guys, Jamarian Bateman, yeah, I know, still kind of a new guy though. Elite shot maker, pressures the ball, and his shooting stand out. Big comments from Otzelberger there. But then as far as the freshmen in general, Otzelberger said that they've come in with a ton of maturity. The impact on winning is noticeable right away. Killian Torre, another pressure the ball guy, makes good decisions, commands the game on offense and defense. So basically what I'm seeing here is we've got a very tough team. About Dominic Nelson, he said he's tall, he's long, he gets to the paint in the basket, gets deflections. What I'm constantly seeing here is that this team is going to be scrappy. The effort's going to be through the roof, and they are going to hustle, which is, I know, effort in a way. They are going to hustle their way to wins this upcoming season. That's going to be defensive, a very defensive, intense team, a team that's only going to allow probably 20 to 25 points a game is my guess. A team that's going to come down with more rebounds, a team that's going to come away with more daggers, if you will, more hammers, if you will. And I think that this is something that the team was potentially missing a little bit last year. Rebounding wasn't, I don't think, their strength per se. And basically what I'm seeing from these guys is only good things. The comments that Otzelberger is making. Now, of course, he's not going to come out and completely rip his guys in the middle of June. Right ahead of July 1. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, well, we're the worst team in the nation. So thank you, Cyclones, Cyclone fans, Cyclone Nation for supporting us. But this season, yeah, he might as well not even come to a game. No, he actually talked about just how awesome Hilton is. It's the best place to play in the entire country, is what he said. Obviously, he was talking about the state tournament being played there. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is I don't think he would come out and say, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we might not win a game this year. It takes a special type of coach to do that. There are a few out there, but Otzelberger isn't one. So you kind of have to take it with like, yeah, of course he's excited about his team and he's high on his guys, but also like you got to remember where he's at as a coach. Nonetheless, I'm still excited. I mean, I'm still pumped up. I think this team could be very, very good just based on the incoming talent. That's super exciting. That is super cool. But that's not the only guys on the team. It's not like literally every Cyclone left, and now they're just like, well, we got a brand new team. See how this goes. No, Iowa State has 5 dudes, 5 dogs, 5 players, 5 gamers, if you will, returning. Obviously Joshua Jefferson, that was a big one this offseason. Milan, Taman, Heisey, Kelderman now on scholarship. Those 5 are so important to this team. You can be unbelievable at basketball and like just maybe you can like dunk from half court. Everything you shoot goes in. Every teammate's the same way. But if the culture is not quite right, something's going to be off. Now, will you win a lot of games? If you could shoot it from anywhere and make it guaranteed, yeah, you'll probably win a lot of games. If you could dunk from half court, also probably I mean, that's freaking sweet. They're probably gonna win a lot of games that way. Out of maybe just sheer imposing fear onto the other team. Why would you have to jump to dunk from half court? Nonetheless, if the culture is off, something, or if the culture is wrong, I guess something will be off, right? Maybe there's wins, but it's just not. It doesn't feel sustainable. Whatever the case is, okay. I'm sure that there are teams that have had bad culture that have been winning teams because of situations like what I just described. But at the core, you want to have a very solid, fundamentally sound culture team, and you can kind of get away with a little bit of leniency. You don't have to be able to dunk from half court, right? You don't have to be able to make every single shot you put up, because the whole team builds itself up and you get better throughout the course of the season, and you learn from the mistakes earlier in the year as opposed to being dragged down by those mistakes. Okay. And I think that's what Iowa State basketball is all about. And so when Otzelberger was talking about these 5 starter, or I guess returners, these 5 veterans, basically, he said that, they're the ones that are going to teach this team, this is how we do things. This is how we practice. This is how we stretch. This is how we treat each other. Those are the kinds of things that kind of go a little bit unnoticed, I think. Probably not to you, because you're here listening to Locked On Cyclones literally every day, and you're the best for that. So you understand that concept. But I think a lot of people kind of let this go by the wayside. And you could even go all the way down to a Kelderman, right? Jefferson, Milan, Taman, and Heisey a little bit less so, but definitely picked up some steam last year towards the end of the year. Those are guys that everyone that's looking at Iowa State is going to say, yeah, those are going to be the guys that carry this team to potentially a Big 12 championship this season. Those are who Iowa State has to lean on to teach these younger guys. Don't sleep on Kelderman, dude. Kelderman's going to be that guy who was the walk-on, was not on scholarship, had to earn every second of playing time, had to earn every rep at practice, and knows the right way to do things, knows exactly how Iowa State basketball is run from the inside out, what the expectations are, what the effort level needs to be a winning program and to be a successful player on the team. That's what he knows best, probably, to be completely honest. Very good at basketball, but he knows that very, very well. And that's something you can convey to those younger guys, and that can elevate the entire level of the program as a whole. I am very excited about what those those veterans, not all seniors, can do for this Iowa State team and these young guys that are coming in, because these young guys coming in have a lot of potential. But just to say really quickly, a couple notes. You made it to this point. These are some golden little nuggets for you. Nate Heisey, obviously, Otzelberger believes that his confidence from the end of the season last year is going to carry over into this year. This is a little factoid from Otzelberger himself. Said that Milan was the only guy in the country at 6'8" or taller that made 2 threes a game in the Power 5 or Power 4 at 40% clip. While that's a long stat, but still an awesome stat. And he said, he only gets better every day, every year. We wonder if he could be making three. Wow. Yeah, no, it's the same word. 3 threes a game. I was thinking 3 free throws for some reason, the F and the T. But no, he said 3 threes a game this year, which is exciting. This is really the golden nugget. So if you made it to this point, shout out. Otzelberger said that Joshua Jefferson has invested a ton of time in his ability to shoot the 3 for this upcoming season. Could be an added threat for the Cyclones. I'm just saying there is literally, like Doctor Strange and the Infinity Stones. It's like, there's only one universe or one, time continuum out of the 14 billion where we win. I think there's more than one situation where Iowa State finds themselves not only as Big 12 champions, as national champions. I don't think I think that's in the cards. The way I'm looking at this team now, the way Otzelberger's talking about them, the things he's saying about them, I am very excited. Let me know what you think in the comments down below and at Nick_Marv on Twitter. I always love reading what you guys have to say. If you made it to this point, you're the best. Make sure to hit subscribe down below. It's completely free, and you help prove it's a Cyclone state. Until next time, Cyclone fans.